Hello and welcome to this video for the full moon in Hasta Nakshatra. The moon will be full in Hasta Nakshatra on the 31st of March, and the exactitude of the full moon will be at 1:36 p.m. UK time. If you want to find out what time that is in your own particular time zone, you can look that information up online, obviously. So you're dealing with something that feels as if your honor is being threatened, right? You're feeling perhaps stuck in a situation that is not moving along as quickly as you might like for it to. And goodness knows you're really trying to do everything that you can to move it on, but every time you try to take that step to push it one step forward, you keep having to take like 3 or 4 different steps back. And it's feeling humiliating to you, and it's feeling embarrassing to you, and perhaps you even feel like you're kind of being singled out for cruel and inhuman punishment by like a mean universe. But you know what? It's really not any of that. It's not any of that at all. And maybe instead of seeing this as a point of honor, it might be helpful to see if perhaps your pride is getting in the way, right? And it's not necessarily that if you keep your pride in check, that everything is just going to free up immediately and move forward as quickly as you might like for it to. But let's put it this way, it certainly can't hurt. You see, what we've got going on at the time of this particular full moon is an approaching exactitude in conjunction between Mars, the cosmic accelerator pedal, and Saturn, the cosmic brake. So imagine that you're in a car and you've got like your foot on the accelerator pedal and you've got your foot on the brake at the same time. It's not really going to go anywhere. And because both Mars and Saturn are in Purva Ashadha Nakshatra, there's a certain degree of shedding that's going on. And what do I mean by shedding, right? Well, let's go back to that concept of honor versus pride, okay? So quite often we end up in these scenarios where we feel like we have our honor to protect, where we feel like we have our dignity that we have to, keep high, right? But sometimes that dignity and sometimes that sense of honor is really just a way for compensating for something inside of us that feels somewhat vulnerable and as if we're dealing with something that we don't want to deal with anymore. And, with this particular energy between Mars and Saturn, it can feel, kind of like being thrown to the ropes over and over again. So of course you're going to feel like you want to come out fighting. And of course you're going to feel like, I've got to respect myself and I've got to take care of this. But sometimes all of that can get in the way. And with Purva Ashadha Nakshatra, there is quite often the need for humility to come into the equation so that the higher ground can be taken. Quite often with Purva Ashadha Nakshatra, there's a battle involved. There's like this tension that's involved. And with Mars and Saturn coming together like that, even though this is an exalted Mars, it's also a pretty damn strong Saturn at the same time. And so these two planets are coming up against each other, and it's just kind of making you feel like you're, stuck and like you're kind of being told no, 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 no over and over again. And you're really looking to have that yes so that things can move forward. But you know what? Before you can even begin to have that yes, you need to have an ounce of humility. At the same time that this is happening, Mars and Saturn are connecting, or I should say Saturn is connecting to both Mars and the Sun in the sky. And Mars and the Sun are what are called the Kshatriya planets. They're noble. They have this sense of nobility. Sometimes when things are impacting them negatively, they have a sense of pride. Now, the good news is both Mars and the Sun are pretty strong right now. And because they're pretty strong, number one, your honor is going to remain intact. Right? Number two, you're going to have the strength to rise above the resistance that you're dealing with. But number 3 has to come into the equation before number 1 and number 2 can happen. And number 3 is just being patient, because the sun is in Revati Nakshatra, and the sun is in close proximity to a retrograde Mercury, and it's kind of taking you back over some old ground before you can free yourself up in order to move forward. At the same time, this particular full moon is forming an aspect to Mars and Saturn. It's obviously forming an aspect to the sun, because that's what creates a full moon. It's forming an angle to Mercury, and it's also forming an angle to Venus. And that's the positive energy that is on the horizon with Venus in Ashwini Nakshatra. When you go through this difficulty, when you go through this change, or what I mean by change is when you go through this change of facing this resistance and having to kind of shed your ego and let your ego kind of take the downside. Even though you may feel that this is more a sense of honor, it's really probably more of a point of pride. But when you let that take the back seat, all of a sudden, things begin to become clearer. You begin to understand what really needs to happen for things to begin to progress, for yourself to get out of kind of a situation where you feel like you're stuck. And then things over time can begin to move a little more quickly. At the very least, the solution becomes clearer. And that solution may not be what you're thinking that it is right now. Okay, so Hasta Nakshatra. Hasta Nakshatra is a mineral nakshatra. Mineral nakshatras are always looking to be supported. And with the moon being full, even though a full moon is strong, the moon also has some weaknesses in other areas due to some of the influences that it's dealing with, due to the position in the sky that it's occupying. We're not going to go too deeply into that. And so that moon has you feeling like you're not being supported, when all that you're really doing is trying to apply yourself, trying to push a change into existence, trying to bring life to something new, a new way of living. Because basically Hasta Nakshatra is connected to Savitar. Savitar is that aspect of the sun that brings life to things, right? So, and it's also a Moksha Nakshatra. So you're trying to bring life to a change in a more positive direction. But you know, sometimes things are not within our control. And even if things are within our control, if we really want something to happen, sometimes we have to face a lot of resistance in the process. And with Hasta Nakshatra, there always seems to be a certain level of resistance, a certain level of a challenge, a certain degree of inertia that one faces. And that inertia can seem on a certain level like it's a complete curse and it's something that you don't want. But really, it's something that is very creative in its process, because basically, when you have a force, right? If a force comes across too strongly, it's going to break the object of what it's trying to achieve. So it needs to be it needs to meet some resistance so that it can crystallize and create something that, number one, is going to be helpful to you as an individual. And number two, well, there is no number two, okay? So it's going to be helpful to you as an individual. And so for it to be helpful to you as an individual, you have to face this resistance. You have to face this resistance. Somewhere in your head, you may feel that you've got a point to prove. But if you let go of needing to prove that point, if you let go of needing to try to prove that you can be successful doing something or prove that you can have a breakthrough, then you may find that working in tandem with either somebody or working in tandem with that higher aspect of yourself that's more deeply connected to your soul is something that's going to take you a lot further than connecting with the limited way in which you might be seeing things now. So wherever you might be feeling stuck, I am willing to try to help you with that problem. All you have to do is schedule an astrological consultation with me through the Astrological Services page of my website. If you would like to visit that page and set something up, you'll find a link to my services page in the video above. That's going to do it for this look at the full moon in Hasta Nakshatra, taking place on the 31st of March, 2018. Until next time, please do take the very best care of yourself. Bye now.